Aaron, what's our second main topic today?
Our second main topic is from Eddie Burton. Hey guys, I gotta ask, does James Cameron deserve as much praise as he's getting for his box office success? It's incredible what he's done, but I feel like a lot of people are ignoring the fact that Titanic and Avatar have been re-released multiple times, and that gross counts towards the final box office. Infinity War and Endgame made their money only being released once in theaters.
All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, Eddie. And you know, I decided to take this question today because it actually comes up a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of Marvel fanboys, of which I'm one, a lot of Marvel fanboys will often try to come up with an excuse or some talk around about what, well, Endgame's really the #1 film. No, it's not. No, it's just look at any chart. It's not. But it's at least a valid question about, well, you know, Avatar had re-releases. So there's something about Avatar. There's an extenuating circumstance about Avatar that is not normal for most films, the re-releases that contributed to its box office. So should it get all this credit, considering there was this extenuating circumstance about it getting it? I understand that because it did. I mean, just recently it was re-released again, made like $40-something million in its re-release. I mean, that's nothing to its $2.9 billion. Yeah. But still, and it made a little bit of money in its other re-release. So it's fair. So I thought we would address this for a second here. And let's go into the Campea classroom for a moment, shall we? Mm-hmm. All right. While it is true that with Avatar, you were asking, should Avatar really get all this credit? Because it had this external circumstance, the re-releases. So really, should James Cameron get credit for having the biggest film of all time? Well, okay, let's look at Endgame. Let's take a second and look at Endgame for a moment, shall we? All right. First thing that we really do need to point out when it comes to Endgame, Endgame also had a re-release. Now, not as many re-releases, but it did that whole stupid gimmick that I hated they started doing for a bit. Like, let's put it out again. But guys, come back again because you're going to see an unfinished Hulk scene in it. And they added that little extra gimmick foot stuff like that. Now, Endgame wasn't the only film to do that. But I'm just saying, let's not forget that Endgame itself also had a re-release. Now, if we want to talk about extenuating circumstances, but that's not normal for other films and other movies that count, well, here's the thing. Endgame had an 11-year franchise buildup. I mean, Avatar, most films, but particularly Avatar, was a standalone movie that did not have some long-running history. It didn't have an 11-year buildup or anything like that. It was a standalone movie, boom, came into theaters, and it performed. Whereas Avengers Endgame, well, it had what some franchise movies have, but not many. It had an 11-year buildup. That's something that Avatar simply did not have. Let's look at another point here about extenuating circumstances when it came to Endgame. Endgame had over 15 major A-list megastars in the movie, all of which were playing characters that had already been established and made popular in other movies. So it wasn't just that Endgame, because you got like what's the Sky is Falling movie that was just on Netflix with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Don't Look Up.
Don't Look Up, right? Yeah. You have movies like Don't Look Up that Timothée Chalamet, Leonardo DiCaprio,
Jennifer Lawrence,
had a stacked cast, but they were all playing characters. Stupid watch. They were all playing characters nobody had ever heard of, nobody had ever seen. Endgame had like, and I could bring up the list if you want, but you know who they are. They had
heavy hitters, man.
15 A-list actors who weren't just A-list actors. They were all characters that the audience already knew, were invested in, made popular in their other movies and blah, blah, blah. That is something 99.999% of other movies never have. So Endgame also had that little bit going for it. There's one other thing, though, that I think we need to, and it's kind of connected a little bit to the notion of that it had an 11-year buildup, but it's that while Avatar was a standalone movie in 2009, Endgame had 21 movies that all built it up, most of which were made by other filmmakers and other writers and other storytellers, all building up to make this one big thing. Avatar didn't have that.
Nope.
Most films, well, no, none. I can't think of a single other film that had a 21 film build up to it.
And the MCU predated the movies by decades. You had comic characters all the way back to the 40s, like Captain America.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that's the last thing I was going to bring up.
We're all sharing a brain with Rob
The
today.
comics for decades. Endgame not only got to build on an 11-year time span build-up, have 15 major stars, all playing characters everybody already knew were made popular, had 21 other movies lifting it up that other filmmakers made, but it was all predicated on characters and IP that went back generations with Marvel Comics. Now, am I saying that all these advantages and extenuating circumstances and unique context for Endgame, do I think this forces us to ask, should Endgame really get credit for being a, $2.8 billion film? No, I'm not. The number's still the number. Even though it had all those advantages, even though it had all those very unique circumstances, even though it had all those unique criteria that no other film had going for it, the number is still the number. I believe it's still completely legitimate. All I'm saying, Rob, is that you can't go, Avatar kind of had this advantage where it had made a couple of extra, double-digit, not triple, double-digit re-releases. Yeah, so maybe that should count. If you're going to do that, then you got to look at Endgame and say, does Endgame actually deserve the credit that it gets? I say absolutely yes to both. Guys, we want to thank a sponsor of this video, Mint Mobile. If saving more and spending less is one of your top goals for 2023, why are you still paying insane amounts of money every month for your phone bill? Switching to Mint Mobile is the easiest way to save money this year. As the first company to sell premium wireless service online only, Mint Mobile lets you order from home and save a ton, with phone plans starting at just $15 a month. Guys, I have told you before that when I was on one of the major phone carriers, I was spending literally 3 times as much every month, and switching to Mint Mobile couldn't have been easier. So for people just looking to save some extra money this year, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and switch easily in just minutes with eSIM. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. I don't know, Rob, how would you address this?
Well, I think that you did a good job explaining, but the thing about Avatar, I think more than any other thing is it's unique in itself. No one had ever seen anything like it before. So not only did it not have this background stuff, it's nothing that anybody could wrap their head around until you see it. To use another Matrix example, you can't be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. And Avatar was kind of like that. And my mom being a perfect example, she's like, what? I always bring it up because going to see that movie with her was such a moment because my mom is totally pragmatic and unimaginative. And she was completely captivated by it, and I'm like, this is why this movie is going to be a monster hit. And I feel the same has happened with Avatar: Way of Water. People have gone, there hasn't been one person, and this happened to me last night. I ran into somebody at the grocery store and they're like, dude, did you see Avatar? Like, come on, who am I? Of course it's Avatar. but they were like it was amazing, and they weren't somebody who loves sci-fi, fantasy, and horror, but that's what Avatar has. I mean, I expected Endgame to be huge. We were sitting here debating. You were saying, I don't think Avatar 2 is going to make $2 billion. And I was like, I don't know, man. I thought it would make money. We didn't know. It's because these movies are singular and they're unique. And like you said, if you want to start playing that, and you've said this before on the show, if you want to play that box office game and go look back, movies used to be re-released all the time.
Yes.
That was the only way to see them, whether it was Wizard of Oz or Gone with the Wind. They would get re-released every 3 or 4 years. Disney animated shows. Heck, you could see Song of the South in the theater. Disney released that up until 1986. They were still re-releasing all of their movies because they weren't out on home video. And that's how they made money. And all those box office dollars have always gone toward the final tally of the movies. And, you know, if you adjusted, if you wanted to start playing that game, adjust for inflation. Like if you do that, Gone with the Wind's made like $8 billion or something. So you can't, like you've always pointed out, and I think astutely so, you've always said, look, the number's the number right now. You can't start judging it based on ticket sales. You can't do it based on inflation. You just have to go with the number because there's all these other factors that play into it. And I think that Avatar deserves it.
I had a question real quick. Yeah. Well, for first runs, did Avatar still make more than Endgame? Then it's not a question. Then it just did.
I can't remember, to be honest.
Like just for that one release, did that make more?
I don't know, because I can't remember how much Endgame made in its initial.
And then also, you know, Avatar, it skews toward IMAX theaters, whereas Endgame played on a lot more screens than Avatar did. So, you know, if you start getting into these,
right, but again, then there's the other extenuating factor, right? That's what I've always said. Like, if you want to take other variable, if you want to, you can't just take one variable into account. If you want to start taking variables into account, you got to take them all. And, you know, somebody brought up to me the other day, well, yeah, but talking about the new Avatar, Avatar 2. Avatar, you know, it's playing a lot of IMAX, so the ticket prices are really high. Yeah. That means they're going to have a harder time selling tickets. Because what do you think is easier to sell? A $100 thing or a $1 thing?
Right.
I mean, so yeah, you want to take the variable of, well, the ticket price is right here. Well, then take in the variable that's going to be more of a deterrent to more people buying tickets. So again, you can't start playing pick and choose with which variables you want to count and which variables you don't want to count. The number is the number. And it is what it is. I don't know. Aaron, what do you think about this whole thing?
Well, Rob just brought up the point of, you know, the number of theaters that it's shown in. When Avatar was released in 2009, it was released on approximately 3,500 theaters nationwide. When Endgame was released in 2019, it was released in approximately 4,600 theaters nationwide. So that's more than 1,000 theaters per day. So like that right there is a huge variable that you have to account for. I mean, at the end of the day, these are...
That's a great stat, by the way. That's a terrific stat.
Yeah,
I love that.
It is.
Thanks. I don't get many wins here, so I take them when I can. At the end of the day, you just don't bet against James Cameron. And this is a filmmaker who is someone who everyone, whether they are in front of the camera, below the line, everyone in Hollywood wants to work with James Cameron. Not because he's a nice guy. There's a lot of big stories about that, but because he is doing something different. He's not just making a movie. He's revolutionizing the entire industry, and he is on the cutting edge. You want to talk about variable frames per second? No. This guy in...
No.
Jonathan, I love you. Well, let's talk about variable frames per second, because in one movie, and this is not something that I know because I'm smart, because I'm not. This is just off the Script Notes podcast with Craig Mazin and John August. They talk about how in one movie he's switching up the frames per second, where it's going to be more frames per second in an underwater scene, kind of like how we watch a football game or sports, where you really are seeing, you know, you're seeing it quick. It's almost if you're right there in the action. And then for a scene that's more dialogue heavy, where you want to slow it down, he's decreasing the frames per second to go back to a more traditional 24 frames per second. And for the filmmakers who are listening and watching the show, you know what I'm talking about, and you know how challenging that is. And to do that and weave that into the orchestration of your storytelling is not just forward thinking. It's almost revolutionizing the way that filmmaking is done, the way that we are, and the way that we're watching it. So this is not to take away from Endgame, but let's be real. Why is it even a comparison? James Cameron is doing something that is making our industry that much better, and we, the viewers, are the ones who get to benefit from it. And what's also great is we also get movies like Endgame, which are just fantastic too for different reasons.
And by the way, Endgame will be re-released again.
Oh, yeah.
Before Avengers 5, they will release Endgame again. And it very well could pass Avatar. And when it does, it counts.
Yes, it does.
It counts. then it'll be the number one film of all time. Listen, if you're a movie and you are the type of movie that people will keep coming, even if they own it on home video in 7 different copies and on digital and all that kind of stuff, but people will still pay money for the movie to come back, then you deserve that to be added to your box office, and Endgame will be the number one film again. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Whatever thoughts you are on all the different variables, jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.